This is Chief Meteorologist Craig Setzer in CBS4 Weather Control with your latest weather webcast for the tropics for Friday. Of course, the big story is Irma. As of 5 p.m., Category 3, winds 120 miles an hour. Of note in this advisory, a couple of things. One, the direction has turned back to a west motion there. It was west-northwest, so that expected. And then the winds up a bit at 120 miles an hour based on satellite methods. Here's the future track taking us through Wednesday daytime, and you can see it's that west-southwest motion into Monday, and then it's more of a west-northwest motion after that. Where this turn takes place back to the west-northwest will be a big player, because if the storm turns more quickly, then it could look more like that. If the storm takes longer to turn or is slower in the turn, then it could look more like that. In any case, of course, the folks in the northern Leeward Islands there need to keep an eye on the storm, as well as Puerto Rico as we get through the weekend. Of course, in South Florida, it's a long way away. We're not in the 5-day cone, but not a bad idea to just check your hurricane supply kit and plans and avoid the rush next week if it's still coming our way. Now, here's the latest models as of Friday evening, and most of them encompassed by the cone. The H-Wharf there, which was improved this last year, has seemingly been performing better. It is a little bit further south on the cone there. And the European model is also kind of in the middle or the left or south side of the cone there. The GFS model, the US model, is a little bit on the north side of the cone at the end of the period, but the Hurricane Center is saying they're following the European and the H-Wharf, which seem to be performing better, and they're also using a new model called the HICA, which we don't have plotted here. That's internal to the Hurricane Center. Now, the reason that we're watching this so closely is because the very reliable European model continues a little bit more of a southward track there. Both models, the GFS, which by the way just jumped here, that is the newest run that's come in, the what we call 18Z or 2 p.m. run, is a little faster and it's a little further along there. It has been jumping around a little bit more, the GFS. The European model has been a little more consistent run to run every 12 hours. But because the European model is so close to us and so far to the south there, of course we're going to have to watch this very, very closely. The time frame there is Saturday, so we have a good amount of time to watch it. But I'm of the opinion that, you know what, beat the crowds, beat the rush, because if this is the cone coming into next week, everybody in South Florida is going to be heading to the stores, and I want to beat the crowds. I don't want that to be an issue. So it's called Understanding the Hurricane Response by the Public, and I want to be ahead of that curve. Here's the visible, or the infrared satellite rather. You can see Irma way out there, still a relatively small hurricane. It's surrounded by drier air, and typically when they're embedded in that drier air, except for in the storms itself, they don't grow that big, don't have the big rain bands, because there's just not enough moisture to feed on. That will likely change over time as Irma matures. Now, the other thing of note today, Irma went through what we call an eye wall replacement cycle, where the inner eye basically contracts and then is replaced by a larger outer eye. And so what happens in that case is there's a brief weakening and then a re-strengthening. And it looks like it's undergoing late in the day here another contraction, as the eye became very visible right there and now is contracting once again. So it could be going through a series of eye wall replacement cycles, which means the intensity is going to be up and down. Elsewhere in the tropics, the western Gulf looking a little bit better. There was some potential for development out here. Right now that looks lower. Still some thunderstorms from what is the relative tail of what was once Harvey. And in the far eastern Atlantic, tropical wave out here has some potential for development, especially later in the weekend and next week. So we'll keep our eyes on that as well. That's it for the tropics, and of course you can get the latest weather information at cbsmiami.com/tropics, where your weather's always on.